Hi everybody! Happy New Year! I think this is my first video of 2024. So it is that time of year where it's time to take down all of the Christmas decorations and have a good tidy up. Time to untangle the Christmas lights that have managed to tangle themselves up. And then once all of this is packed away, it's time to do some miniature making. Normally I'm ready to take the Christmas decorations down and have a good tidy up, but I don't feel like they've been up for that long this year. A lot of my ornaments and baubles have been gifts from other people, so they all mean a lot to me. So time to pack them away and keep them nice and safe so that I can get them out again next year. I always like it when you open the box in December and you remember what you've got. This star ornament's handmade. I bought it from a market stall. It's ceramic. It's absolutely beautiful. Speaking of which, has anyone else been watching the Great Pottery Throwdown and is now looking for a pottery course? Because I am really wanting to have a go at pottery. I had a look last night to see what courses there were near me, but they're all fully booked. I'm feeling inspired. This is particularly special because my mum made it, isn't it beautiful? And she also made my two Santas and my other little fairy here. These are Tilda patterns that she used and they've got such beautiful outfits on. I made her a little Christmas fairy as well, so we've got matching ones. I've just realised that I've spent the first minute and a half talking about my Christmas decorations. This is a miniatures video, honestly. I'm going to make something in a few minutes. But first, let's get these Christmas lights off, get them untangled, get them packed away, so that I've got a nice clear space to work from. And of course, this also means that it's time to take down the miniature Christmas decorations from my doll's house. So farewell, little miniature wreath. I was very proud of you. I will see you again in less than 12 months. And time to take down the little Tudor bow as well, which conveniently will be very easy to take down because I left the needle attached to it and just stuck it up on the magnet at the top here. And then of course I will be taking my miniature holly off the mantelpiece, but I am actually going to leave my mince pies on the table because in the Tudor era they ate lots of pies. I've decided they can stay there all year. They do have a little bit of holly on the plate next to them, but that's fine. So now I must find somewhere to store these Christmas decorations because obviously they are very delicate and I do want to keep them for next year. But first, before I start making some storage for these, I want to show you my sketchbook. So I started renovating this doll's house in August in 2023. So I spent about half a year so far renovating it, and I began with this sketchbook with this big list. And I've just found the sketchbook because I forgot about it, and I realised that I've done things on this list that I haven't ticked off, and I still have some things that are yet to do. So halfway up the list it says remove carpets, which I hadn't ticked but I did do. I've done the kitchen floor, I made a kitchen fireplace, a balustrade, and I attached my little miniature leaded windows that I made. If you're fairly new to my videos, there is a video for every single one of these. So I made a playlist which you can go back and have a look at. Please feel free to watch it from the beginning. And feel free to share it if you have any friends who you think might be interested or if you belong to any groups. I don't have Facebook. I do have an Instagram, but YouTube is my main way of showing what I've been doing. So in my sketchbook I have my experiments, my plans. This is my little plan for my chimney, which I made out of air dry clay. I redid all the brickwork on the doll's house. So I bought my doll's house for, I think it was £15 from a recycling shop. I couldn't believe it when I saw it because I'd wanted one for years. My mum has doll's houses and I'm always really inspired by what she does. So when I saw this one, I absolutely loved it. As soon as I saw it, I knew I wanted to take it back in time to the Tudor era. So I did loads of restructuring inside the doll's house. I made that double height banqueting hall. So yeah, if you haven't watched, please do go back and watch the videos. I also found in this sketchbook that I had written here swords on the wall. So I'd gone to Little Morton Hall, which is a National Trust property, and went there for inspiration, and they had swords on the wall, and I thought, yeah, that would be good for my doll's house. So it's still something that I would like to make. And let's continue this list. So it will be my plans for 2024. So I would like to make a little pot to sit on the oven. I'd like to make a bucket and a sink. I know that I'd mentioned the sink in a previous video, and some people have said that they would like to see that, so don't worry, I've not forgotten. That is very much in my plans. A long time ago I wanted to make... where did my voice just go? I wanted to make some reed mats. Sorry, excuse me, I have no idea where my voice just went then. A long time ago I wanted to make some reed mats, and I forgot about it, so let's put them back on the list. Bedding for my 4-poster bed and curtains to go around the bed. I will do those at my knit and stitch group that I go to once a month. And I'd like an instrument to sit on the gallery, so if you've got any ideas for what instrument, please do leave your ideas in my comments. I'm thinking maybe a lute or something like that. I need to renovate the loft space. There are 2 rooms that are completely untouched, but I am saving that job for when I've got a bit more time. I decided to write here, subscribers' suggestions. So everybody that watches my channel and tunes in, I am so grateful to you all. You are just brilliant. Your ideas are wonderful. I love reading every single comment. So if you have any ideas for what to go into my doll's house, please do leave it in the comments. I have already made some things that people have suggested, and I still have some people's ideas on my list. So portraits of ancestors, fabulous idea, I love it. Chairs to go at the banqueting table, and maybe one in the bedroom. And one person suggested that I make little miniature markets to go at the side of my house with a stall selling cheese and some chickens. I absolutely love this idea, although I don't think my real full-sized house has room for this addition. But I'm thinking maybe a little chicken to trot around the kitchen. Anyway, for now, I need to make a miniature chest. So that is today's project. And that is because, obviously, full-sized Christmas decorations have to have a place and have to be stored nice and neatly, ready for the next year. And so do miniature decorations. So I've decided to keep them in my house in a nice little miniature Tudor chest. So in this video, I am going to take you through the whole process of planning and making my miniature chest. So I started off by doing some rough sketches of the pieces of wood that I needed to cut to make my little miniature chest. And of course, it needed to be big enough to house the decorations. So I measured the length of the holly and also the depth of the Tudor bough, and then I got my wood ready to start cutting. So to make my little miniature chest, I am using some plywood. This is plywood that I had left over in my garage. I actually bought several sheets of it from Facebook Marketplace. They were £2 each. They're huge. I actually used the first sheet to make big doors to go into my lean-to. And with the leftover remnants, I have been making different items of furniture for my doll's house. So I used this wood to make the little sideboard in my doll's house behind the banqueting table where the little candles sit and light up. I used it for the top and bottom of my 4-poster bed, and I used it as well for the oven in the kitchen before putting on the little stone worktop. To work out the measurements for my chest, I did have a little look at some chests that are for sale now and used their dimensions and then divided them to a 1/12 of the size. but I have found whenever I've done this that it hasn't worked particularly well, and I've ended up with items that just look too big and out of scale in my doll's house, and then I've had to alter them and reduce them. This was especially the case for my little Tudor bed. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to cut out these pieces, and then I'm going to have a look at how they look in the doll's house, just to double check. But of course they do have to be big enough to house the Christmas decorations, because that is the whole purpose of making the chest. If you make your own doll's house furniture, I would love to hear what you make it out of. I think that some people use balsa wood, which is a lot thinner than this plywood. I feel like if I used balsa wood I would have a lot neater edge, because this is quite tough to cut through. So I use a Stanley knife to cut through it. When I'm cutting against the grain it's a bit harder than when I'm cutting along with the grain, obviously. If I used a power tool to cut this I think it would split. And I can get through it with the Stanley knife, I just have to score first. I have a metal ruler, but I don't use this to score along to make the line straight, because I found that when I use the ruler I tend to slip. I am quite clumsy. So I always try to cut away from myself, but please don't copy my technique because it's probably not the right or safest way to do it. Once I've used up all my plywood, I probably will have a go with some balsa wood when I'm making my furniture to see what it's like. As I say, I think it's a lot easier to cut through. So at this point I had the front and the back, but I haven't started cutting the sides yet, because I decided to just hold these up in the doll's house to see how they looked and to decide whether the scale looked right. So I sat them on the gallery area. This isn't where the chest will stay in the long term, but for now it will sit on the gallery area when it's finished. But eventually I want to move it into the loft spaces when they've been renovated. Straight away I could tell that this chest was looking far too tall. It wasn't actually helped by the fact that the balustrade in front of it is actually not to scale and is far too low. When I first made this balustrade I thought, oh no, it's too low, but I really liked it, I was really proud of it. It was hard work and I decided not to change it. And actually I went to Hardwick Hall, the National Trust property, and saw that their balustrade was quite low and thought it's fine, it's like Hardwick Hall's. So anyway, I then held this up against the banqueting table and thought, yeah, it's the same size, it shouldn't be the same size, it should definitely be lower than the banqueting table. So I decided that I needed to cut a little bit of it off. So I took it back to my cutting mat and I made a little mark where I thought it needed to be cut down to. So really, I just guessed at where this line was going, and then I decided that I should probably check that the Tudor bow will still fit in the chest if I cut the top bit off, and it was a little bit tight. So I decided to redraw the line a bit higher. There's a lot of mathematical measuring going on here, isn't there? I do tend to just guess. I watch these videos back and think I'm not sure how I got to my end result, because a lot of it was just trial and error. And then, as I was drawing this new line, I remembered that I already have a miniature chest in my doll's house, and it's to the right scale and it's the right height. I bought it probably about a year ago at the York Dolls House fair for really cheap, less than £1. I feel like it might have been 30p. It will be in the video that I made at the time, and it's in my bedroom of my doll's house. So after I'd drawn this line, I then thought, actually, why don't I get that chest out? It looks like it's the right height, so I'll compare the height and use that to help me. And would you believe, after pretty much guessing where the line was going, when I laid this little chunk next to it, it was exactly the same height as the second line that I'd drawn, and I mean like to the millimetre. It was in exactly the same place. I couldn't believe it. So that meant it was definitely the right height. Of course, I will be making a little lid to go onto this trunk, which will raise it up by a millimetre or two, but I think that will still be okay. So I cut the strip off both the front and the back pieces so that they were the same height. Again, didn't use a ruler to measure, I just used the front piece to make a mark to show where I needed to cut off on the other piece. So accurate. I then had a little think about what I could use these two strips for so that they wouldn't go to waste, and I decided to use them for the bottom of the chest because it wouldn't be very visible, only when the lid was off, and actually I liked the fact that they would have a little gap in the middle and they would look a little bit rustic. So they were just the right depth. So I laid them down onto this piece to try and work out what size I needed to cut the sides. I had planned out measurements in my sketchbook. Obviously by this point those measurements had gone completely out of the window and I was making up new measurements as I was going along. If anybody is following these steps to make their own miniature chest, first of all, I hope your measurements are going well, and second of all, it always helps when you have a cat by your side helping you. On a health and safety note, please make sure you don't leave any Stanley knives out when your cat is about. I always make sure that the blade is down and away as soon as I put it down. And yeah, a reminder again, don't copy any of my techniques. I definitely am very clumsy and probably I'm not doing things in the best way that they could be done. So I'd now cut out my front side, the back, the sides, and those two strips that are going to go at the bottom, and if I compare to my little plan at the beginning, I think that it's looking pretty good if we ignore the measurements. So it was time to start gluing them together. I am using the Yoo-Hoo glue that I've used for most projects in my doll's house. I found that it dries quick enough to be nice and tacky and hold itself in position, but also not so quickly that I don't have time to move the pieces if I stick them in the wrong place. So before sticking this bit down, I do need to give it a little trim. Just whilst I'm trimming this bit down, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to everybody who's watched my videos, whether this is the first video that you've watched or whether you've been watching right from the beginning. Honestly, it means so much to me. I have received such kindness from people who have written such lovely comments. I love hearing from everybody. I love hearing your ideas. I love hearing about your own projects and people sharing their own experiences. I found it to be such a kind and welcoming community. I've only been doing Doll's Housing since August and I've loved every second of it. I have found that sometimes I've gone wrong, and when I've gone wrong I've received really kind comments that have been so supportive. People are really happy to share their ideas and their experiences, and yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please feel free to do so. Everybody's welcome. I read every comment, I try to reply to them all. I have made a video I think every week since I started in August, and that is just because I love it so much. So yeah, thank you. I'm so grateful for all of your support. And here's my miniature chest. So I left the chest to dry and then I started to make a little lid to go on the top of it. So to make the lid, I laid the little chest upside down on the remaining plywood and I measured just a little bit bigger than the chest itself so that there's a little lip hanging over the edge. By this point it was getting dark. It took about a day to make the chest from start to finish. although I must admit that I did have a little break in the middle. Things had to dry, didn't they? So I did pop out and just have a little look around the shops, had a look to see what the charity shops had to offer. I love charity shop shopping, it's great. So for the lid, I also found this little bit of really thin wood. This piece of wood is actually the bit of black panelling that was behind the Aga cooker when I first got the doll's house, and I removed the cooker and I decided to remove this piece of wood because I was going to cut a hole into the wall to make a fireplace. And when I removed this piece of card, it already had the hole there for the fireplace. It's in one of my earlier videos, probably the one where I made the kitchen fireplace, I think. So yeah, I kept the bit of wood and it's come in handy here. The reason I stuck it onto the back of the lid was so that when it sits on the chest, the depth of just that little bit of wood means that it won't fall off the chest. Now you may have noticed that I didn't sand the wood and some of the edges did look a little bit rough. But the reason I didn't sand it was because I knew that I was going to put a little cover on it. So this is like a piece of watercolour card, I would say, that I bought from Scrap Store. So I'm not quite sure what type of card it is, but it looks like watercolour. And what I did here was I made a cover the same shape as each side of the chest. And then I cut out these sections to make it look like panelling. This is a technique that I used on the sideboard that went into the banqueting hall and it worked really well. And I think it helps to neaten off the wood that's a little bit rough and also gives me the opportunity to add a bit of extra design to the chest. I actually struggled to cut through this card. It was quite difficult. I think it was harder to cut through than the wood. So I repeated this for each side of the miniature chest, and then I stuck them on with Yoo-hoo glue, making sure that I'd covered each edge and each corner and each side because I need it to stick down fully without any gaps, because I will be painting this and I don't want any sort of bumps or ripples in the card. If I was to make this again, I would cut these strips a little bit thinner because they look a bit chunky, but they're okay. Just that the side panel that I did for the banqueting hall, the strips were thinner and I think they looked better. I found that this card is a really good card for painting because it doesn't sort of ripple or shrink under the weight of the water in the paint. I think that's because it might be watercolour paper and it's really thick. So if you are doing something similar, I would look for a thick card or a thick watercolour paper. I also like the texture of it because it's almost got a wood grain to it, so I think if it wasn't textured it might just look a little bit too flat. If you've made any pieces of furniture yourself for your doll's houses, I would love to hear about it, so please do let me know in the comments what pieces of furniture you've made, what you've made them out of. Yeah, I'd love to hear. chest before it's painted. I like how the lid fits on, but I think that the lid needs a little bit of embellishment. So I decided to draw the Tudor rose onto the piece of paper, and then I cut it out using a craft knife, and it's one that's specifically for cutting paper. It's kind of got a bit of a ball bearing in it, so that it rotates a bit more as you go around corners, so it helps to cut out that finer detail. Once this is attached to the lid and painted, I want it to look like it's been carved out of the wood. So after cutting out the main shape, I then actually cut out the petals in the middle and the little circle in the middle of the flower, because then I was going to layer it up as I stuck it down onto the lid. I'm sorry, I've mainly just filmed my hands here. So there we go. For the base, I put the outer edges, the outer petals, and then I stuck a little bit of scrap paper into the middle because I needed the next set of petals to sit on top of this scrap paper so that they were raised up slightly. I then repeated this and stuck some scrap paper in the middle again before sticking down the middle section. And I also made the decision to cut out another set of the 5 little leaves that go at the sides because I wanted them raised up as well. These were quite fiddly, and I did actually then get a pair of nail scissors to cut them out. It was a lot easier. And this is what they look like. And when they were dry, I started to paint. I painted tentatively here because I wasn't quite sure if it was dry. So I just put a thin layer over and brushed really gently, and when I was confident that it was dry, I added a bit more paint. The paint that I used was raw umber acrylic, which is the same paint that I've used for most of the furniture in my doll's house, and for the wash that I used for the doll's house floor, and also over the beams that I added to the walls, so I found it to be a really useful paint. I painted the entire chest so that it was painted on the inside and the outside, and I painted over the paper and over the wood, trying to make sure that I got into all of the little creases so that it was completely covered. And this is what it looked like when it was fully painted, and the lid is a little bit wet here, but I was so eager to have a look, so just ignore the fact that it's a bit wet. So first I had to check that the Tudor bowl fit inside. It was dry inside. I wasn't risking getting any paint onto my Christmas decorations. So I popped the bow in first, and it was quite a tight fit. At this point I realised that when I made the choice to use the 2 spare strips of wood for the bottom of the chest, I didn't check that that made it wide enough to fit the Tudor bow in, so I was very, very lucky because it actually fit just perfectly. I decided to pop the holly at the bottom of the chest so that it could lie flat. So the first piece fit perfectly. The second piece, as I'm watching this video back, I am thinking to myself, how did I not break that as I pushed it in? I should have probably just trimmed the bottom bit off. That would have been a lot safer, but it didn't break, it's fine. Okay, so I then put the little bow on top, and then it was time to check that the wreath fit in as well. I am actually watching this back now as I'm popping all of these decorations in and then pushing the lid down and thinking, how have I not broken these delicate decorations? Maybe they're not as delicate as I thought they were. So it's time to pop this onto the gallery where it's going to stay until the loft space is ready. Thank you so much to anyone who's watched the whole video, and I hope that you've enjoyed it. Please remember to let me know in the comments what you think of this miniature chest, if you've got any ideas of things for me to make in the future, what you'd like to see me make first. Remember to subscribe if you've not already, and please do share the video with whoever you like, who you think might be interested. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've had a good start to the new year, and I hope that you've enjoyed the video. I'll just leave you now with a couple of pictures of the gallery, of my little chandelier, my deer, my little miniature portrait. Have a lovely day or evening, whatever time of day you're watching, and I'll see you soon.